I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, this is the Planning and Zoning Board / local planning agency. It's an advisory board which makes recommendations to the county commissioners who will make the final decisions on these items. Items on today's agenda will be heard by the county commission on May 5th. Items H1 and H3 are LPA items. When a motion ends in any kind of a split vote, a roll call vote may be taken to ensure accuracy. As a reminder, each member who makes a motion or a second needs to turn their microphone on so that your voice is on the record. At this time, if any board member has had any ex parte communication regarding any application, please disclose so now. All right, seeing that, need approval for the P&Z minutes from March 14th, 2020.
Mr. Chair, so moved.
A motion by Ben. Second by Ron. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passed unanimously.
Mr. Chair, before we get started, I just wanted to bring the board's attention to items H1 and H7. Those will be heard as the LPA since they're land use amendments.
You want to just do those two first? Or is it okay to go ahead and go in order, or you
Well,
want to?
we can go in order. I just wanted you to be aware of that little nuance, but go ahead, Peter.
Okay, item H1, please, sir.
Item H1 and H2, they're companion items. The first one is the future land use amendment, so it will require a separate motion as the LPA, and the second one is a rezoning, which will require a second motion as the Planning and Zoning Board, assuming H1 passes. So I'm going to read H1. Storsafe of Rockledge, LLC, Nathan Lee, requests a small-scale comprehensive plan amendment, 21S.03, to change the future land use designation from residential 4, NC, and CC to all CC. That's application number 21PZ00083, and it pertains to tax account numbers 2511096, 2511103, and 2511119 in District 2. This item was tabled from the March 14th P&Z meeting. Item H2 is also Storsafe of Rockledge, LLC, Nathan Lee, requests a zoning classification change from AU to BU1, AU and BU1 to all BU2 under application number 22Z00004. That's tax account numbers 2511096, 2511103, and 2511119 in District 2. This item was also tabled from the March 14th, 2022 P&Z meeting.
All right, thank you, sir. Is the applicant here? Sir, when you get to the podium, if you could please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, sir. My name is Nathan Lee with Kimley Horn and Associates, 7391 Office Park Place, Melbourne, Florida, 32940.
Okay, and a little bit about what you're wanting to do here.
Basically, my client purchased approximately 12 acres along US 1, and we got on the phone with the county here to talk about, it's a bunch of different land uses and a bunch of different zonings. So we were trying to make it more consistent with what's north and south along US 1.
And that's the old Hales Groves building? Is that correct?
I think it's the Orange Grove.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Harvey site.
Harvey's, okay, yes. All right, 1 second, please. Is there going to be anyone in the audience want to speak for or against this item? All right, hold on 1 second. Do we have any questions right now for the applicant while he's here?
Myself and the,
I may have a question. I don't know when, Mr. Chairman, when it's right time.
All right, I'm going to bring him back up.
Okay.
As soon as we,
I can attack him
yes.
then?
and the landowner is here as well, just.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, if you could come up and state your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Ed Johnson, 1945 Rockledge Drive, Rockledge, Florida, 32955. We live directly behind the Harvey's Grove, and a couple of my neighbors are here, and there was actually a group of 8 of us that put together this document. We oppose the BU2 zoning. We would not oppose BU1. They want the BU2, and they've stated in the document here, so they can store RVs and boats and stuff like that. And our main concern is our property. This is our backyard, basically.
Right.
And we wouldn't oppose the BU1 if they put a nice fence up like we see in so many communities. My wife and I checked a couple of them, and they were like 8, 9, and 10-foot masonry fences that really look nice. And if they could put something like that up, so just, and make sure the lighting, and I understand you have a lighting zone that we don't have lights in our backyard, and a 20-foot vegetative buffer. I think all that is already required. We would be okay with the BU1. Right now, I believe 4 parcels are AU, and three of the parcels are BU1. One document shows 5, another one shows 7. I think the one with 7 is correct.
Right.
And then if you were to approve the BU2, we would just ask that the fence, that there be a restriction on the height of the vehicles, and that the fence is high enough to block them out. We just, we're worried about property values, and I know somewhere in your comments, they're concerned about lighting and noise and odors and the valuation of the property exceeding 5%. And I think that's a very, very high probability. There are other things too that intersection has issues. I won't go into all that. I know I've only got 3 minutes. You have slow-moving vehicles pulling RVs and people pulling boats and coming out of that location. You're going to have an accident. I mean, I was in an accident there, and both cars were totaled. So it's not, that would happen. Just something to think about. We would not be opposed to them maybe having 3 buildings instead of 2, instead of the RVs, just so they can, everybody wants to have a good return on their investment. We're trying to, find something happy for everybody. So.
Now, are you, sir, speaking on behalf of the 8 that's here, your neighbors?
I think most of the people gave me, certainly the people that are here.
So we'll give you a little more time. How about that?
Oh, I think, let me then go through my notes real quick. I think I've got the buffer, 3 buildings out of 10.
A nice fence.
And the storage of the vehicles is just not in the character of the neighborhood. I've got friends that have property, a business on Richard Road, and they have that there, and it's just a montage of all different. And it looks fine there, but there's only one such facility on Route 1 between Pineda and 520, and it's an old place, and it's in the back. It's been there forever. And, but if you approve it and you have a wall or something that will keep it out of our view.
Well, here again now, we're just going to recommend
Okay.
to the county commissioners. So
Okay.
whatever is said today still has to go in front of the county commissioners and be approved.
Okay.
So
Will
but
we
can make recommendations.
Will we need to be there for that as well, I guess?
I would definitely show up there if what happens today is not suitable for what you're looking for.
Okay. Okay. Okay, well, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
for your time.
Can I ask him?
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Chairman? Have you seen this colored map that we just?
Yeah, I have that with me. I did.
Okay.
I did notice and it was by this company. I just mentioned this.
Yeah, you can't say too much to me without it being on the mic. Okay. Okay, I was just concerned because
I-
this is some pretty good information.
Yeah, I have this, Miss Jennifer Jones was
Yes, sir.
kind to send us, but I would just mention, and this was by Kimley Horn, that they have the setback, the rear setback on this document at 15 feet and the front setback at 25. And I believe the rear is 25 and the front is 50. I mean, that's, I don't know that.
Is I still got, let me ask another one. Is the owner here that had the crib out there in the front of their house?
No, but he was here last time.
Okay.
And we are in the old Plucky Bomb farmhouse. And
Okay.
and the wires ran from our house to that location when they,
I think I've been around too long.
well, I suspected that.
Yeah, he
there-
just passed away, Dr. Weber.
Okay. Because I
So, are there
didn't
any
know
other
if we want to get into
questions?
that one.
You good?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
Mr. Menaboo, you good?
Yeah,
Okay, other than the 8 that he was representing, anybody else in the audience want to speak for or against this item? Okay, sir, if you and the landowner could come up here, and now I'm going to bring that back to the board for any questions for the applicant and the landowner.
Mr. Chairman, if I can have.
Yes, sir.
Being with Kimmy Horn, you're a civil? Yes, sir. Okay, great. Your positive outfall here will ultimately go to the river?
Yes.
Okay. Are you aware of the drainage that runs perpendicular across their property?
Through the drainage easement, yes.
Okay.
There's a drainage easement to the river as well.
Yes, sir. Is that publicly dedicated today?
It's, we're checking on title through the property.
Okay.
The county owns the parcel where it goes from
Yeah.
our properity to the river.
I'm probably the only one that knows that, which is not good, yeah. It's probably
Counts
good.
2 of us.
2 of us.
3.
The problem you got, I mean, I'm not gonna help you design, but the water that comes off that hill, which is Allenby Crookshank, comes into there, ultimately is the only underpass under the railroad and so forth and so on. I'd want to make sure that it's publicly dedicated, if it's not. And I would make that part of the binding development plan. I just don't think this county can let that get away, because it affects the city of Rockledge, it affects a tremendous amount of people, and nobody here has no history, don't know about it. But when it rains to the west, it gets wet.
I'll let him defer to
Sure.
whether or not.
Yeah,
but
the owner's
I
here,
would
so
ask
he-
that it would be rerouted in some way. potentially.
Well, I just think, I don't need to get into routing, but you need we need publicly dedicated easement through that area. Because if you guys get mad at us, and I say the county, I mean, it's not us, it's not conducive, you know.
Sir,
So,
before
that's-
you,
I'm sorry.
one second, Mr. Menaboo, before you respond, could you get your name and address on the record too?
Absolutely.
And if you could pick back up with
Sure.
him.
My name's Jim Sag. I'm a principal and the Chief Development Officer at Storsafe. Our address is 5301 Dempster, Dempster, Suite 300, Skokie, Illinois, 60077. And if I could put my neighbors' minds at ease, which is why I flew down here this morning, is just to meet you and give you some personal assurances. We are not interested in doing any outdoor parking there, not for vehicles, not for boats, at all. And I would be totally happy.
Need to get next to the
Sure, and I'm a little tall. I'd be totally happy if the BU2 zoning were conditionally approved on not having any outdoor vehicle or boat parking. That way, we could have uniformity of zoning that's appropriate on US Highway 1. We can be held to architectural standards that are appropriate for self-storage. I want to further give my neighbors this peace of mind, that it makes the most sense, given what Mr. Minaboo brought up, and some of the things that Kimley Horn's been working on, to have storm detention as a perfect natural buffer between a low-density use, low intensity of use, which is self-storage, and the property. So the ag parcel will likely be where we would put storm detention. It would, of course, be required to have a fence. We would provide a very nice fence there. Not masonry, that would not be what we propose, but the 20-foot landscape buffer, absolutely. Our goal would be that we take this eyesore that you've looked at, as much as I love Jim Harvey and I love the history of Harvey's Groves, to take a very tall, dilapidated structure that you perceive and replace it with something that you don't perceive, and to try and make it something that you don't really know that it's there.
It was an orange grove
At one time, yes, in ancient
We
history,
gotta
yeah.
just focus up here, but
Yeah.
you've had your chance, sir.
I apologize. I'm very,
No,
but I am very
you
eager
can go ahead.
to
That's fine.
be a good neighbor.
Yes, you got the microphone, so. yeah, that's-
Absolutely. Very eager to be a good neighbor, very eager to fit in with the neighborhood. Those are absolutely beautiful homes behind us. And our site plan, and you can hold me to this, is very conscious of ensuring that those homes are, that their value is enhanced by what we do, let alone that we don't detract from any value. Those are beautiful homes along there. I don't know what other questions the commission might have for me. Oh, we're also here to work with, obviously, the county. I'm not here today to speak to the ins and outs of civil engineering. Obviously, we have a plan in the back of our minds, or in our mind's eye. It will get refined as we get smarter, and we'll work with you. I mean, that's all
Mr.
I can
Chairman?
say for here today.
Yes, sir.
You probably went to Northwestern too, didn't you? Oh,
Indiana.
Okay, I figured that.
He went to Kentucky, I went to Indiana. So you got a couple basketball schools.
Okay, I just thought
Or
I'd
they used
add
to be
that too.
Yeah.
The last, he's answered 9 of my 10 questions. I'm glad the owner has come in from Illinois. Do you have any, if we said that this was going to be not a warehouse, but do you need the BU2, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, it would be a much more appropriate use type for what we're doing.
Okay.
We would be, to be held to the architectural standards of, a strip mall or,
Okay.
another type of commercial development that I've done plenty of, I don't think would be appropriate.
Okay.
And there's no question, regardless, whether it's BU1 or BU2, you're looking at a real weird patchwork of zoning. I don't know if you saw the little, to say spot zoning is an understatement. There's even this tiny little postage stamp of
Good.
CC in the middle of it. So, whatever we pick,
Good.
we'll work with. Most important thing is that it's all one thing. Our
Good.
strong preference would be BU2.
I'm done. Thank you.
Now, going back to what you just said, if we did decide to go with BU2, masonry fence in a BDP, and I don't even know, staff, you might could help me out here.
It's required by code,
In a BU2 at 10 foot?
up against residential.
Even 10 foot?
No, it's only 6 foot by code.
So if we went up to 10,
I don't know if we can, that's,
If I may
If we can
also,
do
you
that,
got to
I
look
don't
at the topography there, that this site is so much higher. You might not, be careful what you ask for, because you might not want a 10-foot fence there.
No,
This
I'm
site is
just
quite
speaking.
higher in elevation than what's behind it.
So staff, can you go with a variance to an 8 foot to a 10 foot?
well, we don't give variances.
Well, you can have, So we're talking, first, this is for the zoning item. There is a
Yeah,
land
land
use,
use,
okay, I
we
just
can
want
look at it.
to,
We
I
don't
just
get
want to
into
make sure that we
that,
can
yeah.
discuss both items, but this is for the zoning portion of it. So if there's any concerns that the board has as far as whether, you don't, see that BU2 is a good fit, or there's some other conditions that you want to put on this zoning request, it wouldn't be a variance, it wouldn't be a conditional use, it would be a BDP. And that's the legal document that would provide the additional conditions or restrictions that you see fit.
Okay.
And that's at the zoning time. So I have a couple questions, if I can go ahead and butt in.
Yes, sir.
Because we just had a similar request for this, and there was a reason to go to BU2 for storage, because it gives you the height. So what's your proposed height for this building?
They're just single story, so it's a
Single
single
story, so
story
you don't
gable
want,
roof,
you're not
climate
going
control.
35
Nope.
foot? Okay.
Nope, and when I say that the goal is to really vanish this from their perception versus the tall Harvey's building that's there now, I don't see why that wouldn't be the case.
So this is going to be more your old traditional roll-up doors, single-story, people coming in to store their stuff, bring
You-
their car in, and
You could say that, but with the way things are being built now and the amount of technology going into storage, yeah, it's.
right, but it's not the new style
No, it's not a
high-rise
Gen
with-
3 vertical, we call it a precast, nope, not at all.
So that's, okay. I was going to say, because this is a really big piece of property for something like that. So you're going to have this thing covered with with units.
Yeah, and there's a lot of
Across the board.
advantages to doing it this way versus that. And when you have a big piece of land, and land is plentiful. We thought in earlier iterations even about taking advantage of the bluff and having something that looked one story and then dropped down, and you didn't need an elevator because you can go in one at one elevation and another at another. And it just didn't make sense. Makes a lot more sense for all the buildings to be single
Well,
story.
that makes a huge, that really allays a lot of my concerns. So one thing that might be appropriate, and it's, I don't know how this works, because sometimes the code doesn't take everything into consideration, because they want you to put a 6-foot concrete masonry wall on the property line. Well, the property line is where you have all the existing vegetation. So in order to put the wall up, you got to rip down all that long-standing, probably very thick buffer that you have. But if you're going to do single-story, probably block units, I imagine, that it would probably be best served to make that outer wall that 6-foot fence and have no breaks outside of that wall.
And
to
if I
get-
may, if the.
And no penetrations
If,
along that.
if the
east
county's
end.
apparatus gets another bite at this apple, actually looking at a plan versus just talking about the zoning, it might be more appropriate for us to take these concerns, right? And handle that at that time, because honestly, in my mind's eye, our preliminary engineering is, we're buffered by a detention pond, we're buffered by landscaping. The height of the fence, I think when you see this, and if the engineering bears out, which I'm pretty sure it will, is kind of an afterthought, because you're so far away from the actual storage buildings at that point, that it's kind of an academic discussion. It just makes it
So it
more.
really would make sense to
Yeah.
have that wall where the accident is and not way far away where you have all that buffering that you're proposing.
Right, on
Um,
the other hand, we need to protect the storm detention pond by code.
Yeah, no,
so,
absolutely. Yeah, and, I would say, and I know we're only in land use, but I think when we get to zoning, I think a BDP is going to be really appropriate in this, and that might, it might cost you a little bit of time on your part, but I think it might make it a little smoother to get through the whole process, and maybe seeing a plan as part of that.
Okay.
But as far as the land use, I don't really have any concerns on the land use particularly.
Any other questions for the applicant?
I have a couple.
Yes, sir.
Is this like standard storage? You're going to have it operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week?
Well, the ability to do that is typically what we give, right? We own only 9 minutes away on US Highway 1 in Palm Shores, another site that has a resident manager. So typically you wouldn't put a resident manager in two locations that are that close together. So what this typically would have is an end cap office that's more or less like you take, instead of putting 2 storage units and or 4 storage units at the end. You have a little end cap office just for our district manager or staff to be able to meet, a customer there if they need to buy a box or something like that. They have that. So that will not be in operation 24/7. Technology these days with the apps, which we call Storage Genie, and some of the other systems that we have in place, PTI keypads, yes, people can access it 24/7 unless by ordinance or otherwise we are told to limit our hours, in which case we would.
All right. What about lighting?
Sure. So one thing people don't know about the self-storage business is that self-storage decisions are largely made by the female head of household, not male. And right out of the guidebook is you have to have a well-lit site. It's part of safety, it's part of marketing appeal, it's part of operations. So we do not want to create any more lumens or spectacle for our neighbors than is necessary. But it's usually downlighting just to illuminate a roadway. It's usually wall mounted to our buildings. I honestly don't believe when we look at the plan that this would be something that would be perceptible from our neighbors. I don't. That can be borne out by, again, the land use process, the building permit process, anything you condition, but I cannot imagine these are not overhead lights on poles. These are just wall-mounted lights to illuminate the drive aisles in between buildings.
So because you've eliminated any outdoor parking for RVs and boats and things, that you're not going to have any large-scale open areas with pendant lighting?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Under BU2, are they allowed to have shops?
What do you mean by shops?
You know, like
BU2
maintenance shops and auto repair and stuff like that?
Yes.
Yes, they are. I
They
thought-
are.
Yes, they are, it's in there.
Thought that
That's
was
what I
I.
thought.
Okay, well, there you go, BDP stuff.
We are not permissive of that, nor are
But
we
if you get
permissive
that
of any,
designation, you will be allowed to.
unless you condition it, and when I'm happy to live with that condition as well. I mean, absolutely not. We don't even do U-Hauls at our sites, because U-Hauls are so distracting to the ongoing central business of renting storage. It makes U-Haul money, doesn't make us money. We don't want people doing that. We don't want people doing repairs. We certainly don't want people having unsanctioned retail operations there. And most of the zoning codes we're used to nationally, I can't speak to Brevard County specifically, outright prohibit that. And that's something maybe you consider for amending your zoning code, but
Okay.
absolutely not something we want or encourage, and we in fact shut it down.
In your operations, when people come to you and they want to rent space, do you have requirements as far as what they can and cannot put in your facility?
Yeah, I mean, hazardous materials cannot be stored in
And
our
how do you
facility.
monitor that, though?
Well, I mean, they'd be in violation of a contract is how we monitor it. There isn't a self-storage operator out there that can actually look at the contents of every single storage space that you rent. But we require it in the contract. It absolutely can't do it. Be the same thing as any tenant violating any lease. So,
Are you going to have cameras on site?
absolutely, a lot,
A lot, okay.
yeah.
Your turn. No. All right.
Any
That's all I
other
got.
questions for the applicant? Yes, ma'am, Miss Liz.
So most of my questions have been answered. So the BU2 does allow those uses. So as part of the BDP, I'm going to make a request that we limit it to self-storage operations only, and then therefore that eliminates gas stations or any other, if they decide to sell the site. Also, the BU2 gives you additional square footage from the BU1. So it's an architectural, actually, it's more square footage for your, which is, I understand.
Yeah.
So how many buildings are you going to have on the site?
Well, the north, for now, is planned to have, 4, I think, 24,000 square foot buildings and maybe a very small one. The constraint on this site is topography and storm retention. That's
a
more
orange
than,
grove.
more than zoning, more than, GFA or FAR or any of the things you might, permeable surface, any of the things you might throw at me, the constraint on this site. Well, there's another constraint too, which is, certain width of building, which makes it viable, certain width of drive aisle, which is required to make the fire marshal happy. And that's typically what limits, the amount of buildings and units you could put here. But in this site has a natural constraint with storm detention and topography.
So as we go back to the comprehensive plan and we look at administrative policy 4, the compatibility of the neighborhood, I do disagree with the consultant because this entire property abuts residential 4, the entire property. So it's not like you're shoring up community commercial. The entire back of the property is residential. So I wouldn't say that you're making it consistent with the rest of the zoning that's along US 1. Behind you is all Res 4, so.
It's all landlocked.
Pardon me?
It's all landlocked.
Yeah.
You don't buy the property.
No, I understand, but anyways, that's what I want to say about that. But part of the comprehensive plan considerations is like hours of operation, lighting, odor, noise, traffic. And so when you talk about the lighting in the BDP, I'd like to have us consider none of their lamps can be faced towards the residential neighborhood. I'd like to understand what your hours of operation are so they have an expectation. If your garbage trucks are going to be picking up garbage at 2 in the morning because that's when your guy is on site. I'd like to know a little bit more about.
Let me make a comment about why this is a perfect buffer and why typically abutting residential like this off a highway, this is honestly the highest and best use for this site and should be music to my neighbor's ears. First of all, dumpsters are the enemy of storage. We don't actively put dumpsters on the site so that people can just throw their stuff away instead of being our customers for years. So our scavenger service would be like having a doctor's office there, right? There's one dumpster. It is only for really one small container. It's to support the small office that we'd have on site. It's not to support acres and acres of storage because we don't by any means encourage people to throw stuff away. Probably put us out of business, right? So I'll say that about that. On lighting, if we can let building code, along with some guidance from you guys, dictate that, look, we do have a requirement to minimally illuminate a drive aisle, whatever lumens and shadow diagram and lighting diagram that the building department's going to require of us. But normally, all those lights shine straight down. So it's not a matter of it being mounted on an elevation that faces the neighborhood.
Right.
It's a matter of it being the type of light that is a downlight or that has you call it with street lights when you have a blinder on the light. And that's typically what you use in self-storage.
Right.
Just use an LED wall pack that has that blinder on it that shoots straight down.
I've just dealt with ball field lighting shining into neighborhoods. And
Yeah.
so, that's not what they have now, so
Yeah.
I'm trying to look out for their land use
I am
rights as
too.
well. So, no,
Yeah.
you're being very accommodating, so
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And then as far as the character of the neighborhood, it sounds like you want to be good neighbors. It is AU currently. I mean, it could be an active farm with farm equipment and things in that nature. I don't think storage facilities have traffic like you would if it was something like a Wawa's or something else. So, are we going to vote on the comprehensive plan first?
No,
and-
land use, yes.
And then we'll go do the BDP on the zoning? Okay, so I'll wait to make my recommendations on the BDP. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Ron, yes, sir.
on the site plan that you submitted, there's areas for outdoor storage in the north and south. You said you're not going to have outdoor storage. Are you going to, in your first phase of development, put buildings in those areas, or is that a future development, or do you know?
Our current plan would be to build buildings to the north first.
Okay,
And then after market absorption, we would design something for the south.
okay,
But it would likely be a mirror image of what we would do on the north,
okay.
which is I believe, to be about 4 or 5 24,000 square foot buildings. Yeah.
Okay.
And, yeah, so I'll leave it at that.
And the lining, most of the lining will be around the storage units attached to the building. Will you have some lights at the front of your facility that are higher for when people are driving in?
So the signage and lighting at the front will largely be a function of engineering and not really land use, right? And I don't think my neighbors, I don't want to speak for you at all, but I don't think my neighbors are as concerned with what would happen right there because it's so far away from them.
Yeah. I just didn't want to give the impression that the only lining was only going to be at 7 or 8 foot level and there wasn't going to be any high.
So there might be, the caveat would be at the entrance, there
Yeah.
might be one,
Yeah, okay.
right?
The retention ponds you have, are those going to be wet or dry?
Could you repeat the question?
The retention ponds, are they going to be wet or dry?
Most likely wet.
Okay.
I mean, the river's right there and the water table's not that.
They're
so-
gonna be wet. That's all I think.
No, no.
All right, and let's see, what else did I have? You will not be, well, you're not going to have any outdoor storage here. You're not going to have any RVs or trucks or anything like that.
Correct.
So none of the associated services for that. No 18-wheelers, no overnight stays. What kind of parking, what kind of wall will you provide at the back? We've talked about concrete, and we've talked about
Yeah.
vegetative buffer or,
Right. We would find it more than appropriate, given that it will likely be invisible, to have 6-foot vinyl fencing. That's
Okay.
our standard. And there's a 20-foot landscaping buffer, so this is mostly protecting the detention pond and securing the site,
okay?
which is important. I think it would work against everyone's interest to go higher. The nominal cost to go 6 feet or 8 feet is unimportant. But there is already a major topographical difference here, right? I think a 10-foot fence would be a blight. That would be my opinion if I lived behind this site. But, you know, I'm open to whatever. I just think it's probably more appropriate to have a 6-foot vinyl fence that's hidden behind a landscape buffer than that's visible.
Okay. Will you provide water for the vegetation, so you don't plant it and 6 months later it's dead?
I would like to offer, if we could, work with staff to possibly incorporate what the existing vegetation is out there in the 20 feet as well, and come to something that, kind of works for everybody.
Yeah.
Trees and the fence can be planted out there, but I don't want to take down existing vegetation if
No,
it's
I
good
don't,
and
I'm not
established.
recommending or don't want you to take down existing heavy vegetation unless it's pepper trees, but other than that,
I just wanted to offer that.
okay. And the hours of operation essentially is going to be 24 hours, so there will be, because you've automated the process, people can come in at 2 or 3 o'clock in the
Yeah.
morning and
In-
access their storage unit.
In practice, that doesn't happen, right? Unless it's some situation where, we've all moved. Things don't go according to plan. Takes longer. It's an exhausting day of your life. Probably the only thing worse is a funeral than moving. But you've got, all of a sudden it gets to be midnight, okay, we're loaded, and maybe something like that's happening. But you got to understand what a low intense use it is. that's once every blue moon. This is not people like our, a customer storing, plumbing supplies on site, or the person storing Christmas decorations on site, or the person who moved from a 7,000 square foot home to a 3,000 square foot home and doesn't want to give away heirlooms. You know how often they come? Like never. You know how often they come at 2 in the morning? Double never. So I hear you, and you're right to ask the question, and you certainly can condition our hours of operation, and we'll work with it. But in practice, it's just not something, and you can go to any self-storage facility. You just don't see activity there in the overnight,
Yeah.
but for exceptions.
One last question. Have you done a traffic study, and do you have any idea what kind of access, like turn lanes and slow-down lanes that you'll need for yet?
We haven't done a traffic study at this time. Generally, self-storage is the lowest generator of traffic out there, but we can do one if needed.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And I will say the site does already have a very large couple of curb cuts and a deceleration lane.
Right, yeah, I've been by there several times.
Okay, anybody else on the board, any other questions?
Mr. Chair, if I can just interrupt for a second, because I did hear some stuff that I wanted to address. First of all, the applicant did provide a conceptual plan for staff to review. Staff did not review that plan. It's not part of the rezoning request and is subject to change. Other departments have not reviewed that as well. Just wanted to put that on the record of that concept plan. It is out there, but it hasn't been reviewed for consistency with our land development code regulations. Secondly, I heard a lot of discussion about lighting. We have an ordinance on lighting standards. If those of you that are not familiar with it, it's 62-2257, which basically says you cannot cast any light on the adjacent properties. So that, and you can't have any direct lighting source visible from the property line. So if there's a wall pack, that has the lighting source, you have to put a shield around it. So that'll all be reviewed. That, along with access and buffering, will be reviewed at the site plan stage, which is a staff review process outside of this. So what you guys are here today for is a comp plan amendment and a rezoning request. Certainly with the rezoning requests for the use, if you see any offsite impacts that need to be addressed, certainly a BDP would be appropriate in this circumstance. But just wanted to bring those couple items out there for you to consider.
Yes, sir.
I've got two more questions.
Yes, sir.
In your planning of this facility, what is the largest size unit that someone could rent?
10 by 30.
10 by 30. So
That's
300 square
in
feet.
in any facility we own.
That's the
Other
largest.
than if we do, like, this is probably not going to translate well to Florida, but in Wisconsin, where they have ski hills, we'll do specialized big toy storage. That's the only time we do anything bigger than 10 by 30, and that site is a specialized site. We have 14 by 45 units. 10 by 30 is the answer to your question.
Okay, so what's your drive aisle width normally?
Is it 28 or 30? It's 28 or 30, depending, and again, in the building review process, what the fire marshal wants. We clip the corners of our buildings to be able to
Make the turns.
add the turning radius. So that typically we're given the ability to do 28 feet because we clip our corners. Otherwise, it'll be 30.
Okay, so someone could bring in a very large vehicle, large truck with that kind of width, correct?
Well, it's designed to have vehicles going in either direction.
Right.
Typically, the largest thing you're going to see is whatever the largest U-Haul you can rent is. I mean, that's the most typical thing. If somebody is moving, with a national moving company like Mayflower or something like that, I mean, typically those companies have their own facilities they store stuff at and then bring it to the homeowner. This is self-storage, which implies self-rental of a vehicle. And most weekend warriors moving don't know how to operate that class of truck. So you could get a moving company here and there, but by and large, what we're talking about is the largest vehicle you would anticipate here, at least on a commonplace basis, would be a U-Haul truck.
Okay, what my concern is noise. 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, a big truck comes in there, a bunch of guys jump out and start unloading.
Sure.
You got neighbors that may be concerned.
I hear you.
Thank you. You got it?
Okay, any other questions from the board?
I'd be glad to make a motion.
Go ahead.
Okay, I make a motion that we move to change the future land use designation from Res 4, NC, CC to all CC.
I'll second that motion.
We got a motion by Liz, a second by Bruce. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passed unanimously. So item H2.
I've got some more questions. Now that we're getting to the meat and potatoes.
Right.
Is your facility in Palm Shores, is that the AAA storage? Is that you guys?
Yeah, we just bought it on April 5th.
Okay. Looks nice.
Thank you.
I have all kinds of questions about this site plan. You plan on parking a lot of cars on this site?
No,
You've got to have 100-something parking spaces at least on this.
that plan is no longer the plan. So that's why I'm here today. And I'm sorry to my neighbors for
Okay.
alarming you.
Yeah,
with
because
that
this
plan.
looks like outdoor
Yeah,
storage to me.
No, we are not going with that plan, and that's why
Okay.
I've said on the record, you can feel free to condition this with no
Okay.
outdoor car or boat parking.
Okay. Yeah, this layout is definitely not what I was thinking when I was talking about walls and things like that, because I was thinking it was going to be more like that storage facility up there in Mims, where it's all internal and the buildings are around the perimeter and you drive internal and you don't, I mean, you've got drives around these larger buildings where you're going to have people backing up into the buildings, shining their lights onto the neighbor's property. And I don't know how old this aerial is, but it shows one house to the east, and there's got to be at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 where you show one. So I don't know where that came from, so that's a little misleading.
Well, we didn't do ourselves any favors.
Yeah,
leading
with
that
that,
plan.
yeah, and I don't see a lot of buffer preservation on this plan as well. So, I think that there's going to be a lot of things we need to talk about as far as, getting the BDP to control some of this buffering. I'm very familiar with the performance standards on the lighting, so not concerned about that. That's probably the most strict lighting ordinance in the county, because you got to have all cutoff fixtures and you can't shine you got to do a photometrics plan. You can't exceed the lighting at the property line by a very, very minute amount, fraction of an amount.
Can I present something?
So, you got
Do
something?
they have a copy of
They do
that?
not, it's not entered into the public record, so,
We'll give them a copy. They'll give us the rest,
sure.
and we'll take a look at that.
Here, I just want,
Just so I'm not keeping my neighbors in suspense here.
So, I mean, if you don't need all that parking, I assume we're going to have a lot more buildings? I don't know until I see the plan that you're talking about.
Jennifer's going to make copies for you so you can pass it around. It's quite a bit different from what the plan is
Okay.
in the packet.
Because I think the parking is, 5 spaces is what's allowed, maximum?
For
Self-storage?
mini storage, or it's, I think it's a minimum of 3 parking spaces, and then if you have a residence, it's 1. But typically, parking that's shown on that plan is not required for a mini storage or a
I think
storage
it actually
facility.
has a maximum, I think, of 5. So that would be something, obviously, we would want to have the stipulation of the use, where we only have self-storage is the only allowed use, and there'll be no businesses operating out of there, no maintenance, and none of that kind of stuff would be strictly prohibited. But I think we need to really look at how we're going to protect the buffer and where we're going to put this wall and what kind of wall it's going to be. So I'm curious to see the plan.
And I would look at the second page that has elevations that just kind of makes the point about the fence as well.
Because we can't waive the wall requirement,
Nope.
the county commission can.
Nor are we asking you to.
Yeah,
Just
I mean,
gives
we
an
can't,
idea
we
on
can't
height.
waive it from anything other than a 6-foot masonry unless you specifically apply for a different waiver, a separate waiver.
Section 62-2109A, if the property is zoned commercial and adjacent to residential, they can have up to a 10-foot or even a 12-foot with a binding development plan.
Okay.
So they're not,
So
they're
we
not
can-
limited.
We can increase the height, but we can't waive
Eliminate it.
the
They
what
don't
it's
need a
built out of.
variance to go,
Good.
Okay. 8 or even 10 feet.
Good
And
to
you
know.
could even theoretically go up to 12 with a binding development plan.
Okay, good to know. Is this just to pass around? We only got one?
We only got one.
Bruce, part of the BDP, when they say they're going to have future development on the south side or the north side?
This is conceptual. I mean, this would be the south side would look something like the north
Right,
side.
well, I would just include that, that's all that can be built on that property. Like, they can't parcel it out, sell it. I mean, they could, but it'll be, the BDP would say self-storage. Okay.
Yes, this would be, yeah. There's definitely,
How many square feet are you planning for the first phase? Because that looks like about 120,000,
I think
It's a
right around
little-
100. I think it's right around 100.
Yeah.
about 100?
Yeah.
Because this property would lend yourself to about 530,000 square feet? Okay.
That's not market, that's not viable.
Well, and that's why I don't understand why you're not going with the BU1, because the BU1 will get you 384,000 square foot, and you still have the ability to do the self-storage, and you're not doing the outside storage, so I'm not sure why you would go to BU2 if you're not doing outside storage. It's about the same square footage that you're talking about for development.
I think we're just trying to have architectural standards that are appropriate for self-storage.
I'm not familiar with architectural
yeah,
standards.
there's some kind of a requirement in BU1 for self-storage. There's some, it makes it, I forget what's it, the material that you can use?
Other than paint, I think it has to be like stucco, a different type of building material.
You can't do metal.
Yeah.
Facing the road.
You're not going to do metal, are you?
It is metal, yeah.
Oh, okay. So that's why you want BU2.
Yeah, so let's be honest,
Okay.
because it's not about, yeah.
Yeah.
All
It's an
right.
I knew there was a reason
Oh,
that,
I was
I
going to
knew
get
there was
there.
another reason, because we just went through that, and that was
And I
the
believe
reason.
even in my opening comments, that's what I said.
Okay.
It's the architectural
Yeah, no,
standards
yeah,
are more
right, and
appropriate.
that's fine. And they can make metal look like anything.
Like a Dollar General store.
Right.
It's like a
Yeah.
Dollar General.
So, I mean, we can make perimeter, material requirements, we can make, wall requirements, we can do all that stuff, so. I don't know if we do all that here, it could be a long list, and we could be here for a while.
Well, does your company have different architectural designs of this building in other areas?
No, but you could go look at Storsafe of Palm Shores right down the road, and I mean, that's more or less what it looked like. And the, storm detention in the front would be at the rear. Those are, or you can go to just about any self-storage facility USA that's built in a contemporary way.
What is the height of the building from slab to top, to the eave? Not to the top of the roof, but to where the trusses meet the wall? 8 feet?
To the highest point. It's
No,
only-
not the highest point, like, so if you were,
If you're inside the facility.
yeah,
I
if you were
think a
inside,
wall, a little taller than that.
9, 10 maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think 13 tallest.
So if you put, based on that layout, if you put a wall around that entire east and north along the edge of the road, and then wrapped it into that last building, so you would never, all you would see is a
But
wall?
That's what
at
he's
that
saying
height?
though, but based on the elevation of the site, it'd be like putting a wall down.
Well, that's what I'm saying, if you put it up at the road where the use is, as opposed to on the property line where it's 5 or 6 feet lower, well, I don't know, I don't have the topo, but
I mean, I'll
if
be
you ran it
clear.
along the edge of pavement, it would actually work, it would actually have some use to it.
The buildings are not unattractive by any,
No, but
by
there's
any
no,
means.
they don't have, you don't have any penetrations in the back, right, of that building? It's just a solid wall. No, it's not that one.
They do, and I
Not-
actu-
Not the eastmost one, because the back, there's no way to get to the back of it.
Correct. So that's a good point in showing the
So,
neighbors
so
that.
if you continued that all along the pavement edge, all you would see is a wall. Well, you have to look over the pond and through the trees to see it,
another
but
one
you
of those
wouldn't
plans.
see the use at all. This building here. So if you came here,
Is the
you
other
continued
standard?
this around here,
No, he just.
Yeah, I mean,
you know,
everything
like
would
I said,
be
it'll just be
confined.
Yeah, we don't
walls
have doors there
and this
anyways.
would all be
Yeah.
buffered.
That's what he said.
Yeah.
But to
you're
put
right.
the wall over here doesn't make any
Doesn't make any
sense.
sense, no.
Yeah, we do not have both the one-story storage building proposed, the 5,800 square foot one, and the ones facing US 1. There are no doors facing the
Right.
highway, if that's what you're asking.
Right.
That's a good idea, Bruce.
Yeah, haven't been, but another little thing.
So what is your idea, Bruce? I didn't.
Bruce, there's a lot of elevation change between the edge of the road and where it falls to the river, believe me.
Yeah, no, I'm sure of that.
It's extremely, we used to call that the Rockledge Mountain, so I don't know if that's good or not.
You need a marker. There's no markers.
You don't have a marker on you, do you?
I have a highlighter.
You got a highlighter? There you go.
Mr. Chair, if I could just interrupt and give you my 2 cents worth. It seems to me that there's a lot of consternation up on the board of what's it going to look like, and a lot of design questions, hours of operation, and anything else. And so what is an option for you is present that to the applicant for them to go back and address those. And whether it's a BDP or if they can come up with a rendering to show you guys what the buildings are going to look like, that is an option for you guys to consider.
And I just for me, I'm finding it hard to increase the zoning to BU2 just so that the building could be aluminum. I mean, I just, when he's asking for the square footage in BU1, he's not doing outsourced door storage, and so we're going to increase this density to a BU2, which is much higher density, when he doesn't need it other than what the building material is going to be. But there's a whole list of BDP things we can ask them to bring back. If you want to get started.
Yeah, you want to start making a list? Who's got?
I got a list.
You want to write it down?
I did.
Okay. What you got on the list so far?
Well, so far, I've got, obviously, no outdoor storage,
No outdoor storage, check.
the 20-foot landscape buffer, including whatever the site plan requires for buffering of the building. It's going to be single-story. It's going to be a self-storage operation
Only,
on not only what they're planning for Phase 1, but on the property 2 that will not be built on right away. So the entire property would be self-storage. The landscape buffer will be maintained by the property owner. And then I don't know that I ever understood how many buildings are we talking about? 4 to 8
Four
current?
standard ones and one small one.
Okay,
That's what was on that plan.
yeah, I just glanced at it. So on the other property, it'll kind of mirror what you're,
Well,
based on what you can get on there? And maybe that's a question you can come back with.
that's what I'd like.
Yeah,
to
let's do that.
Because
Don't-
I
It's hard to do it real time.
yeah, I mean, I
Okay.
was prepared today to
I-
talk about having uniform zoning. It was either BU1 or BU2.
And
So,
I think Henry had,
That's the first thing I said was BU1, so, that was my thoughts at the beginning, but I certainly felt you guys knew better than I did.
did you have anything on drainage that you wanted to add to the BD?
Oh, no, they're aware of the
Yeah.
drainage
Yeah,
issue,
Okay.
I think,
See what
yeah.
they're gonna, because they got to write it up and they've got to agree to
That's
it.
gonna be documented, that'll be documented, the
what will be, I'm sorry, Henry, I wasn't paying attention.
easement for the drainage.
So you got, let's put it in the BDP.
Yeah.
We can put it in there. I'll tell you my heartburn is that,
Well, I just think we need to let Public Works be aware of that, and then they can handle it.
yeah, I would rather do that
Do it
than,
that way.
than to put a BDP condition in there, because if Public Works doesn't like it, then it has to go in front of the board to get it amended. And that, so,
Yeah, here's kind of, I wouldn't say it's a guarantee, but the county won't let them discharge into it if it's not a publicly maintained discharge, off-site discharge.
I just didn't want to lose
So
it.
they're going to have to, yeah, no, I hear you. And the
That
county
thing
owns,
is-
the county owns it, right?
You don't have that many holes across the railroad anymore, so.
Yeah. Yep,
It's I mean, they need it, everybody
So-
needs it, the people.
yes, sir.
Anyway.
So
Bruce,
they'll
did I
have
miss
to
anything?
maintain it,
Let's don't
they'll have
blind
to
them,
maintain
these
it as
people.
public if they want to
Totally
use it,
confused.
so.
No.
Bruce, did I miss anything? Did you want to add any to the BDP?
Did we talk about the wall location and the height?
Not the location, I was going to let you handle that one.
What, did you put a height? Did you have a height
Nope,
on
I
it?
just said that whatever requirements were required by site plan
Okay.
review. So if there's something different, add it.
Yeah, I would think that we would want the wall at the edge of the improvements,
Okay,
with no penetrations, other than maybe a fence for maintenance purposes to get back to to maintain the pond, but it would still have to be a opaque,
8 foot?
8 foot, yeah.
Okay.
Have you got that down, your everything?
Yeah.
We're doing a good job designing this thing for you. A little sarcasm. You're gonna put your seal on this.
Okay, Liz, you gonna put this in a motion?
I thought we were going to ask the applicant to come back with a BDP.
Does that, just one
You
thing,
want-
was
Can't
that, are you taking advantage of the existing turn lane still, since now you're moving everything to the north side of the site?
Yes, we are still taking advantage of the existing turn lane.
Okay, okay. And then we'll let the DOT tell you about closing your other ones, they can handle that part.
They always do.
They always do, yep.
And the
Okay.
only question I didn't ask is if you're going to be on sewer or septic.
Oh, no, they're not on septic. I mean, they're on septic, they're not on sewer.
Yeah,
There's
I
only
mean,
one-
that's the use, I mean, the
We will not
water
like-
and sewer use
There's
are
only one sewer place,
like
That
minimum.
minimal, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I just asked
and it's
it.
not for Garden County.
Yeah, the biggest thing they'll need is water for firefighting purposes, they'll have to
They
get that.
got cocoa water.
They got cocoa water, yeah.
So should we, Jeff, should we ask to table to the next P and Z to bring back? the
that
BDP?
is up your decision of whether you're comfortable enough moving it forward with the BDP.
Why don't we ask the applicant?
I'm fine, I mean, if the board's gonna know our
Would you like to
recommendations.
table this to come back, or would you like to hear? I think you've already heard what she is.
Was there
got
anything you
kinda-
specifically object to?
So I'll make two comments. Firstly, H1 is settled business at this point.
Yes.
right?
Correct.
Great, okay. On H2, the reason I would want, well, here, in a perfect world, if you're all comfortable with the whole thing being BU1 and it's the BU2 that's giving you heartburn, I would love to leave today with BU1 zoning on the whole site. If that's an oversimplification of your position, and we're headed towards a BDA with these things being memorialized as opposed to making some comments to the BOCC, then I would want, the only thing giving me a little bit of heartburn is requiring self-storage on the whole site. That I want to think about. If you want to lift that, we could do, we could talk about other stuff, but that's a lot driven by market, and I would need to think about that.
So the future use on the other property could be something different?
No, I
Other
was
than
just
this property.
planning on today being more about uniformity of zoning than even some of the discussion that we got into. So, no, I mean, our plan would be self-storage on the whole site, but, I wasn't, I can live, I can live with these if we want to do, this is an advisory body, and if those are the things you want to advise, I can live with these things and have further discussion at BOCC about them. So,
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
one of the primary reasons we wanted the BDP was because it was going to be BU2. If they'll accept BU1, we can recommend BU1. And that gets us rid of some of the requirements and some of our needs for the BDP. Not all of them, but it gets Some of
Not
them.
really.
Yeah.
What does it address the issue of the metal building from BU1?
I mean, to me, that's like having to put a facade on two buildings, which is basically 730 lineal feet of building, and it makes my neighbors comfortable, it makes Brevard County comfortable. I can live with 730 square feet of architectural detail.
I don't have a problem with the BU2 as long as they have what we're talking about. And do we have, did we have the material on the wall? Did we specify that?
We did not.
8-foot block, finished, not just a block wall? That's at least, do we want it stucco? Do we want it painted? What do we
Well,
want?
what he just said, a facade improvement other than the metal facing US 1.
Okay,
Bruce, we're designing this thing.
I know.
Well, I'm not asking you to design it by any means. We'll
Buffer
adhere,
wall, not the building. I don't,
we'll adhere to what's prescribed.
if we have a
in
buffer
BU1.
wall, then
Yeah, we just need to decide between BU1, BU2, or BDP.
BU2, BDP, I think is fine. It's almost like BU1,
yeah.
just giving him the metal building. So,
Would you feel comfortable doing
Yep.
a motion with that?
Well, I just read out the BDP, so are you all comfortable with Bruce's?
With everything we talked about.
With a
with
finished
BU2.
8-foot wall, masonry.
10-foot now?
8.
Oh, 8. On the back.
I'll make that motion.
And does that include, though, the entire site is self-storage? Because he's talking about outdoor storage on one of the properties, so you're okay with,
I'm not talking about outdoor storage on
At all?
either property.
Okay, then I'm good.
At all, zero.
I'll second.
Yeah. And
all.
if market changes, you can always come back for a modified BDP.
Yeah, I mean,
Do something else.
yeah, I just don't want
I can live
to,
with that.
With all the conditions that we talked about, mine and hers for the
You got those,
BDP.
Jed?
Do we have to relist them all?
Jed's got everything.
Jen's got it all?
You want Jen to read them out?
That'd be, would you please?
I have now, if I can read my writing. Limited to self-storage use only on the entire property, no lamps to face the neighbors, no outdoor storage, 20-foot landscape buffer on top of whatever site plan requires, a single-story landscape buffer to be maintained by the property owner, and a wall requirement at the edge of the improvements, an 8-foot masonry wall.
And the masonry wall to be finished.
And located along the edge of the improvements, being building and parking.
You all happy with that?
Did we, was there a single story limited? We said, okay, all right.
Yes.
I'm good. Yeah, that's my motion.
So we have a motion by Bruce,
I'm going to second it.
a second by Henry. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passed unanimously.
Thanks for coming
Thank
today.
you.
thank you all
If
very
we left
much.
it to Kimley Horn, we might have still been here till 9 or
Oh,
something.
come on. Thanks for
Little
working
humor.
with me. I appreciate it. Thank you. There you go.
Okay, item H3.
Item H3, Rotation Holdings LLC requests an amendment to an existing BDP and a BU2 zoning classification, 3640 North US Highway 1, Cocoa, application number 22Z00007, tax account number 2411214 in District 1. And I want to bring the board's attention, if you could please turn to page 2 of the staff comments. Toward the bottom, there's a correction. Under criteria A, towards the bottom of page 2 of the staff report, instead of 62-1482, the code reference should be 62-1483.
Okay, is the applicant here? Sir, if you could please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Don Smith, 3640 North Highway 1, Cocoa, Florida, 32926.
A little bit why you wanting to do this.
Basically, we've outgrown the current building that we're in. Our BDP restricts when we originally did our BDP, we were doing outdoor boat storage, RV storage, like you guys were just talking about. So we were doing that on the back 2/3 of the property. We want to extend our building further that way, so we're looking to remove that restriction of only having the outdoor storage back there, so that we can add on to our current building, is the simple answer.
All right. Hold on right there 1 second.
When did we put that BDP on him?
It's been about 5 years, I believe.
Is that?
2017.
Didn't we put that on because of the residential?
Yes. And so,
Yeah.
I know you guys have it up there as well, but we did the 8-foot fence, masonry fence along the back line. We had the 20-foot property buffer along the back line. And then the motorcycle major repair we also had on there as
Yeah.
well to make sure that we weren't doing anything major. So what we're looking to do is to remove the restriction of the outdoor storage so we can add on to the building. Because of doing that, we've offered to make our buffer 50 foot along the rear of the property to help with buffering along that edge. And the Natural Resources suggested we do some more plantings along the back line as well, so we offered to do that.
Mr. Chair, the existing BDP was done in 2016. Jennifer just passed out some conceptual plans for you guys to look at. Again, for the record, staff has not reviewed that for consistency, and other departments has not reviewed that for code compliance.
Hold on 1 second, sir. Hearing that, does anyone in the audience want to speak for or against this item? Sir, if you could scoot over there. Ma'am, come on up and grab the podium, and if you'd state your name and address for the record.
My name is Dusty Michelle
could get
Parker,
Close to that mic.
and I live at 142 North Twin Lakes Road, on the property adjacent to the subject property.
Okay.
They have been fantastic commercial building to have behind us. We're also adjacent next to a Emerald Island nursery, so we enjoy 100 foot of BDP vegetative buffer from that business. When Mr. Smith, when we were here in 2016 to do the BDP for this, he was generous enough to increase the height of the concrete wall to his immediate neighbor to 8 feet versus the 6 feet that's required. The issue that I have with removing the conditions are the noise. I know in his binding development plan, it says that they do minor motorcycle repair work there, and it is loud. It is the equivalent of being, you know, he'll, in essence, if he expands his building to do more work, it will move his building back closer to my backyard. And when they have Saturday hours, 9 to 2, this is really about just trying to preserve the noise reduction we have. A 20-foot vegetative buffer is nothing, and that's basically for visual. As the chairperson mentioned before, the placement of the block wall, even though he has it there, it's at the very back of the property on the eastern side. So we do have a lot of noise. They've always been very considerate with the lighting back there. We've asked them to adjust it down, and they've done that over the years. I mean, we've not had a problem with, they also have RV and boat storage back there now, like he said. People do have 24-hour access to it. We don't experience a lot of issue. The main thing that we're concerned about is the motorcycle noise, and in the BDP, it specifically states he's not to do motorcycle repair work there. And he's doing it now. I mean, I can only assume he's going to be doing it. This is the reason he's expanding, to expand his business, and we're pro-business. I mean, we're great for that, but we also want to enjoy our property that we have lived in for almost 20 years with not as much noise coming at us in our backyard.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else like to speak for or against this item? All right, seeing that, sir, if you could come back up and bring it back to the board. We got any questions for the applicant?
Can I address a couple of the things that she mentioned?
Yes, sir.
Okay. First of all, I mentioned the major motorcycle repair. That's in the BDP. So the minor noise that, and I don't mean to say minor, we can do minor repairs, which is service work on motorcycles. So that's the noise that she's referring to. We're not changing that or requesting that we remove to major. We're still doing the minor. As far as the noise, I definitely understand the possibility of extending our business there. Why we're extending is purely our online business. So our warehouse is going to be about 80% of that space. So as far as traffic to the site, whether it's motorcycles, actually the RVs are going to be limited by about 2/3 now since we're cutting that down. But we don't expect any more traffic as far as adding onto our building for our retail side. This is purely for our online business because that's 95% of what we do is boxing and shipping. So we don't expect to double our building size and double the traffic that's
So the
from
warehouse
motorcycles.
part of the business would be more close to her property?
Yes, yes. And Saturday hours, we actually do not do any more of the motorcycle repairs or anything on Saturdays.
So that should help
So it's a
baffle
Monday
the
through
noise.
Friday, 9 till 5. That's the hours of when we do motorcycle repairs.
Okay.
Does the new BDP state that you would keep that
Yeah.
minor
Yeah,
repair
that
in
we're
the same
not-
location?
The only changes we're making to the BDP would be adding, instead of 20-foot buffer, it'd be a 50-foot buffer along the property line, and removing the restrictions of only having the boat and RV storage in the back.
Okay. And so the 50-foot buffer is just no pavement?
We
Is
can't
it-
do
but-
anything, right?
but it
It's
doesn't mean you have
currently
to put
water
plants? I
It's
mean-
currently water retention and plants, so
Okay.
the 20-foot was trees,
Mm-hmm.
but we have 50-foot area there that we are never going to build in, so we're offering that to make sure that we never do build in it.
Okay.
What is the noise? Impact wrenches and compressors running, or?
Probably the motorcycle traffic, I had assumed, just from people coming
in
in.
and out.
Because we do, I should have mentioned this, but we do all of our motorcycle repairs inside. Like, we have the shop is AC, so we don't have doors open and, running a dyno or something in there where we're constantly running motorcycles. The only motorcycle would be the traffic coming and going.
How do we limit, of course, if the applicant's okay with it, keeping the minor?
It's staying. We're not requesting to remove the major
Is
repair.
there any way to make it to where the back warehouse is only for storage?
With it, no minor, no repair of any kind would be done in the new warehouse?
Can I just interject for a second? I wanted to make
I don't
sure
know
that-
what the language says.
So the language in the existing BDP that was approved in 2016, it's number 5, the site shall not be able to perform motorcycle repairs as listed in section 621102, that's part of the BU2 zoning classification.
Which is
Right.
major, right?
Which is the major repairs.
That's like pulling engines and transmissions and
Correct.
things like that?
Yep.
Okay. So is there no does he want to remove the BDP completely, or is he
No.
going to replace it?
No, that condition is still
Yeah. Okay.
being proposed as is,
don't-
no changes to that.
Okay.
He just wants to
I didn't
increase
see the new
buffer.
BDP. I don't know why I don't have it in my packet.
So,
I got it here.
the noise
Can I
will
see it
not,
real quick?
I'm sorry?
the noise will not increase.
No, again, this add-on isn't for our shop. We're not, we have currently 4 bike lifts in there. We're not adding 30 bike lifts. And it's purely, again, our business, 95% of it is online. So we have to have a shop to be able to do minor repairs, whatnot. We do some service work for Brevard County's motorcycles, but again, that's not why we're adding on to the building.
I understand, thank you.
So if I can boil it down for the board, the proposed conditions to the BDP is to amend condition 2 to read, developer/owner shall provide a 50-foot buffer on the east property line and increase the vegetation by adding bald cypress trees every 25 feet, wax myrtles every 5 feet, and mohi grass every 3 feet. With the delete condition 4 in its entirety, and keep all other conditions unchanged. So condition 4 is the developer owner shall limit the usage of the area measuring from the west edge of the 20 feet buffer described in section 2, extending westward 220 feet for the long-term secured recreation vehicles, boats, trailers, and vehicle storage parking lot.
Okay. But the whole property is on BU2, right?
Correct.
So there's nothing in here that I see that shows that he would limit his minor repair to the front building.
No, there was not.
Okay. I think that's what you were saying.
Yeah.
Would that be acceptable to add that condition?
Our current plan, the shop ends up being more so in the middle about where it's at right now, but it would extend somewhat into the new building.
It would some.
Some, yeah, but we're not, the majority of the whole building, like I would say 75% of it's going to be in that's going to go into the current boat storage would be warehouse. So we haven't really gotten that too far yet as far as the building plan. We just know the size, and then we found out we had to get the BDP amended, so.
So you could potentially be moving the lifts.
So
Possibly, yes.
Could we say that not within 100 feet of the rear property line or something like that, or, I don't know.
We are leaving the new storage area, which I didn't mention this, I don't know if it matters, but we're going to be keeping about 103 foot of boat RV storage added in with the buffer that's along the back. That's about 150 foot that's going to be from the property line to our new building.
Okay.
So at the very edge of our building, we'll be at 150 feet.
And that's a metal building, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's going to be
That's all I
the
was
same
saying, 'cause
exactly
if
as.
you moved it in,
So even if we did move it, I mean, we're still going to
to
have 150 foot from the back edge of that new building to the property line.
Right.
I mean, that's a good distance. I'm almost okay with that.
Okay.
And actually, behind our building, we have a dumpster enclosure area, so that actually adds another 25 foot on, so it'd be 175 foot from property line to the edge of our building.
I don't think any BDP would be really limiting noise any further than it's already, the state it's at now. So,
What's the size of this warehouse you're building?
Well, the entire building that we're adding on is 48 by 100, so basically just a smidge over, but our current building is 95 by 48, so we're adding on, basically doubling our building size. So it's about 4,800 square feet. Yes, 4,800.
Motorcycle business is good.
Yeah.
COVID was good for us. For a lot of people spent money on motorcycles, so.
It's good for some people, wouldn't it?
Mr.
Yep.
Chair, if I could just, I was looking through 1102, it has our definition, so it does not have a definition for motorcycle repair. It falls under the automotive repair, minor and major. And so what I would suggest that you do is to limit it to minor repair, just so it's clear, because when we're reviewing this request, we didn't know whether it was major or what was the intent of the board in 2016, whether to allow for major or minor repair.
Gotcha.
Okay, anyone have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve this, subject to adding minor repair.
Second.
Got a motion by Bruce, a second by Ben. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passed unanimously.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Okay, item H4.
That's always.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Item H4, Michael P. Buno and Charles T. Calhoun request to change the zoning classification from GU to RR1. Zoning action number is 21Z00051, and tax accounts are 2000791 and 2000796, all in District 1.
And you, sir, are you the applicant?
Yes, sir.
If you could state your name and address for the record.
Michael Buno, 540 Eloise Avenue, Titusville, Florida, 32796.
And a little bit of why you're wanting to do this.
County staff's been really, really good at putting it all together. It's pretty much cut and dry. I want to rezone 1.06 acres from a GU zoning to an RR zoning to be allowed to build one residential house on it.
That's the bottom one.
All right, hold on right there. Anybody in the audience want to speak for or against this item? Well, that's good news. So seeing that, I bring it back to the board. We have any questions for the applicant?
Almost to approve.
Got a motion by Bruce, a second by Liz. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Item H5.
Yes, sir. Item H5, Robert F. Araro and Jeremy Sothia Son request a change of zoning classification from BU1 and AU to all AU. It's zoning action number 22Z00008, tax account number 2001826, also in District 1.
All right, is the applicant here?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Jack Spira, 5205 Babcock Street, Palm Bay, the attorney for the applicant. I also have the applicant present here today.
If you could get near.
I'm sorry.
There you go. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. As indicated, I represent the applicant. This property is located at 4740 Highway 1 in Mims. The size of the property is 7.24 acres. There's a request of change from AU Agricultural and BU1 to Agricultural AU. The property is divided. The front property, about 1 acre, is the BU1 zoning. The remainder of the property, about 6 acres, is the AU zoning. The property was originally zoned AU, was changed. The entire property was zoned AU, was changed in 1985, where the front part was changed to the BU1. This was approved by this board on September 2nd. It went before the county commission on November 2nd. That county commission, or the board, approved the application, but they placed a BDP on it, asking for a 25-foot buffer along the property lines. The basis for that request was the property owner to the north voiced some concerns about having this type of venue or anything. There could be a wedding venue or something next to your property. The application was withdrawn, and we're back before this board. The BDP requires a consent by a mortgage holder. This was a private mortgage holder who probably has some sort of seller's remorse and wasn't willing to give a consent. So we're back before this board. What we did since this time, my client has met with the property owner, Mrs. Frank, had discussions with her. She indicated, and they've reached an agreement where he would construct a wood fence along her property line. She indicated that she was satisfied with that and would not be opposing. She even asked whether she would, if we wanted, she could appear at this board and recommend approval, but she has no objection to it. It would be a wood fence which would be conducive, consistent with the surrounding shrubbery and the wood in that area. So at this point, we're requesting the board recommend approval to the Board of County Commissioners for the next scheduled hearing. If you have any questions, my client is here to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. Mr. Spira, hold on one second. Anyone in the audience want to speak for or against this item? That's good news.
Sure is.
Seeing that, I bring it back to the board. Do we have any questions for the applicant?
And Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
you previously submitted a site plan for a wedding event venue. Do you intend to use this property in the future for wedding?
I think the intention is to have that option available. At the present time, I know in one of the reports from the staff that none of the surrounding property is zoned agricultural for a property appraiser standpoint. The property appraiser had been on site recently, had seen being used from an agricultural purpose, and it's my understanding they're going to recommend agricultural exemption, but we'd like to keep that option open.
Okay. You wanted to state you want to have horses and goats, and are you planning on raising them for family purposes or just for sale? Or
Let me ask the applicant to answer that. I have no idea why don't you come on up?
And sir, when you come up, if you would state your name and address also for the record.
Yes, Robert Aurario, 4740 US Highway 1 in Mims, 32754. And yes, possibly breeding, possibly a stallion for a stud horse.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions from the board?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I recommend that we approve this zoning change, or recommend that we give him a recommendation for approval.
I'll second that.
We had a second prior to that.
We did?
Okay. Yeah, we had a motion by Ron and then a second by, I'm sorry, sir. Robert. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passed unanimously.
Thank you very much.
All right. Item H6.
Item H6, Tyler M. and Christina N. Boucher request a change of zoning classification from AU to RR1. Zoning action number 22Z00009, tax account number 2316242 in District 2.
And sir, you're the applicant?
Yes, sir.
If you could state your name and address for the record.
I am Tyler Boucher. I live at 6245 North Tropical Trail, Merritt Island, Florida, 32953.
And a little bit, Mr. Tyler, about why you're wanting to do this.
When I currently purchased the property, it was just me and my son, and now I'm married with 3 children in total, and the house on the property is very small, and it's 2.51 acres. The house is all the way at the front on Tropical Trail. I am wanting to, but it being zoned agriculture, I can only have 1 dwelling per 2.5 acres.
Correct.
So I am trying to rezone it to RR1 so I can section off the current house with 1 acre and keep 1.5 acres to build
another house.
Yes.
Okay. Hold on right there. Anyone in the audience want to speak for or against this item? Mr. Tyler, if you could stand aside there and let him take the microphone. And sir, if you could state your name and address for the record.
Yes, sir. West Medlock, 6650 Littleton Lane, Merritt Island. I live at the end of the street. There's 4 houses on the street, and I definitely do not have a problem with them building a house there because his dad lives on the street and he wants to build one beside his dad. I think it's great. A good thing.
So this is a good thing?
It's a good thing, yeah. Like
All
your
right.
grandkids and your son beside you, very good.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Medlock. Mr. Tyler, that's good news.
Yes.
Anyone else like to speak for or against this item? Seeing that, I bring it back to the board.
I make a motion, we accept.
Second.
We have a question. 1 second.
I wanted to ask staff, why was this request denied before?
Or kicked back by county.
The previous application attempt was basically the same thing. They wanted to go from AU to RR1. At the time in 2018, we had that North Merritt Island study going on that was looking at trying to determine whether or not AU parcels in residential 1 should be increased to RR1 or higher densities. So it was a way to cap the development out there in North Merritt Island. So at that time, they did not allow the rezoning for the potential subdivision of the lot. Now the new applicant wants to make the same request.
Thanks, George.
I mean, they got RR1 right next door.
Right.
Okay.
I'm sorry, who had the motion?
Yeah, I made a motion that we accept.
Okay, a motion by Henry, a second by Liz. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passed unanimously.
Thank you, sir.
You don't see that every day.
Okay, item H7.
Item H7 and item H8 are companion applications. Again, item H7 is a comprehensive plan amendment, small scale, and then an accompanying rezoning. The board did review this application already. When it went to the Board of County Commissioners, they requested that the applicant requested that it be tabled, and they wanted to come back before you and with a little different presentation and maybe a different result. So now I'm going to read H7 and H8 into the record. Of course, they have to be voted on separately with separate motions. Rushing Wind LLC, Stephen Austin requests a small-scale comprehensive plan amendment 22S.02 to change the future land use designation from residential 1 to residential 4. Application 22PZ 00003, tax account number 3008616 in District 3. Item H8 is Rushing Wind LLC. Stephen Austin requests a change of zoning classification from RR1 and INL to RU-1-11, application number 22Z00001, tax account number 3008616 in District 3.
Mr. Chairman, just for your own edification, there's a addendum that I provided to you all. Since the applicant amended their request back in March of 2014 to Res 2, it was requested at the board that this item get remanded back to you guys to make a recommendation for Res 4. There is a discrepancy in a criterion for C and D, and that's outlined in your addendum. Basically, C states that in residential 30 directive, residential 15, residential 10, and residential 6, and residential 4 land use designation, centralized potable water and wastewater treatment shall be available concurrent with the impact of the development. Criterion D states that where public water service is available, residential development proposals with densities greater than 4 units per acre shall be required to connect to centralized sewer. So I believe that the applicant is requesting a residential density of 4, which is not more than 4. So it's just you can look at it, from two different criteria. The applicant is requesting for you guys to re-review this and provide a recommendation based on his request of Res 4.
Is the applicant here? Sir, if you could please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
If I could, just before we start discussion.
Yes, sir.
The applicant did reach out and called me because we were the engineer of record for the property next door to the east to see how we did what we did, because it was very similar to what he wanted to do. So we just discussed, what we did on that. We were not retained by them. We did not agree to represent them. I just want to let you know that we did have a discussion on this.
Okay. Alex is okay then.
Mr. Moya, could you explain again what the basis of that relationship was?
So he became aware that we were the engineers representing the project that got the rezoning to the east. And we did get half-acre lots, and he just was curious how that happened and
Okay. So you have no financial interest or connection to this?
Absolutely
All right, fine, thank you.
Sir, I'm sorry, did you state your name and address for the record?
No. Steve Austin, 409 Pelican Key, Melbourne Beach, Florida.
All right, and a little bit of what you're wanting to do. I know you're wanting to go to Res 4.
Yeah, I guess we needed to go to Res 4 because I guess you guys were doing a Res 2 with a binding development agreement of 2 units, and we wanted a little more density than that. Of course, we're working with Holiday Builders as well next door, that's how we got a referral from Bruce. He said to ask him, he could probably, very knowledgeable, and he was very, very knowledgeable and very helpful.
That he is.
And also I wanted to clarify some of the other, we had 2 objections, I guess, last time when I went through the minutes. One was the school board issue. So I called Mrs. Black. She said, yeah, she forgot to put an addendum in there. I can give you a copy of that. I don't know if you got it, but she put an amendment in there. It says she's very sorry that she didn't put this in, but it says considering the adjacent elementary school service, she highlighted it in red on the thing, because Liz had a very good point, and I thought it was all good, and I guess it was, but Mrs. Black did forget to put it in her notes, but she said she did it, and I guess they have a copy of it. It says, considering the adjacent elementary school service areas, there is sufficient capacity for the total projected student membership to accommodate rushing wind development. So she added that. I guess that was one objection, and then I guess I didn't realize he was going to say that. The second, you guys had 1.2C, and I guess he announced it. They said they forgot to put, or did not put D and E, which is where we would fall into. D and E would be where public water service is available. Residential development proposals with densities greater than 4 units per acre shall be required to connect to the centralized sewer system. It just wasn't on your notes there, so they were gracious enough to send us the section 1.2. They had C on your paper, but they later added D and E. They gave me that as well. It says, again, where he read out where water service is available, which it is. I don't have this either, but I did talk to Barefoot Bay. They said the engineer's working on it. We have a request to go into the Barefoot Bay Water District because it has a main water line right at the corner of our lot. He said there's plenty of water. He didn't see any problem with that. We even talked, I didn't realize it either, but he did say if you're ready to develop, they actually have sewer there. They have only 112 units on a first come, first served basis. So the builder said, oh, wow, that he liked that idea too. And the third thing is the difference in the adjoining property, who we're working with now, actually, who Bruce knows. We're looking at he's at RU 113, and he still's okay with that, but he is also open to our RU 111, which is a slightly smaller lot, which would give, smaller building. It's 200-foot smaller size homes. Now, he's still not saying he still may want to do the RU 113, but we want the option of possibly putting a little bit smaller home in there with more density on. Now, we're probably not going to go to the full RU4, but we have to have RU4 even to do a lesser even to do a greater density than 2.
Yes, ma'am, Liz.
I understand going to the residential 4, and then I think the BDP that we talked about the last meeting was to cap you at 48.
No, it's cap us at 2 units per acre.
Right, but total density at 48.
Yeah, correct.
So we can still do the Res 4 if he wants the smaller lot size, right, Bruce? And then cap him at 48, which would be the...
Well, we think we can get maybe 2.5 units per acre possibly, even though we may not use that, but we'd like to have that ability.
Well, I don't like doing spot zoning. I don't like telling you, sure, and then as many as you can fit on there, go for it. I mean, all we've done is increase the value of your property, and we have nothing to show us what you're doing. How many homes, how many septic tanks, how much storm, so I'm just uncomfortable approving a zoning when we have no idea what's going to be out there, how many septic tanks.
Well, we do have, actually, Bill's, that's what he does, he's a septic.
No, I
owns a septic
understand
company,
septic tanks. No. What I'm saying is, we change your zoning, your value of that property significantly goes up. And who's to say you just don't put a for sale sign on it tomorrow? And we've now increased the value of your property because we've increased your density. So my concern is, unless you show us what you're planning to do and what the impacts are going to be to the roads, the septic, the environment, I don't need a full-blown site plan, but you heard some of the discussion earlier. We had a lot of good questions about.
Well, we're going to be limited by a lot of the engineering as, well, I don't
I understand
bring
all
up any names,
that.
but, it is going to be limited by septic and water and the various other things. But, so now it'd go to the engineers to try and see what kind of housing they could put on that property and meet the, and also meet the, we want to keep it in the same zoning requirements it is already. We want to keep it somewhat rural. So they're going to keep it almost to the exact dimensions of the guy next door, but some of the homes are going to be a little smaller.
But you
so we
understand,
need
you're
more
asking
density.
for an RU111. There's nothing that says we're going to try to keep it rural. That's why we have these BDPs. That's why, we look out for the neighbors of where you're going to develop, and you have handed us nothing but, we're going to do that.
We do have a rough site plan now, and it is 46 units, but we think
But I think that's what got approved, except now you're looking for the,
Well,
like Bruce,
Well, yeah, but we want the ability to possibly go to 2.5 units per acre, which means I have to go to RU4
Right.
And then maybe if you want to put a binding development agreement on it to 3 units, I'm okay with that.
Isn't it the total density? It's not the unit.
I just want to put things in perspective for you. So RU 111, or I'm sorry.
No, it's already.
RU 113, which is the zoning to the east of the property. In this request of RU 111, the only difference between those two zoning districts is the size of the house.
Right.
One allows for a 1,100 square foot house, and one allows for a 1,300 square foot house. All the setbacks, all the lot size standards stay the same.
And that's minimum house size.
Right.
Yeah. So
That's
what we
yes.
did on the property next door is we did the Res 2 and had the binding development plan. Even though we didn't ask for Res 4, we only asked for Res 2. But because you have to have, if you don't get sewer, which is probably not going to happen because the cost to bring sewer's located
Right.
on Dottie
Sewer's-
Drive, about, I don't know, a mile away, half a mile, it's far.
The sewer's probably not
So to bring it to
practical.
the site, and even if you do get into the Barefoot Bay utility district, they may or may not give you sewer because
Right.
of what's happening with Crystal Lakes. But you would have to ask for, to get into the district, even just to get water. So the requirement is that you have to have, if you get public water, you can go to quarter-acre lots if you have septic. Now, we didn't, I don't think we even got to 2 units to the acre on septic over at the place next door. So, you know, whatever we give them, whatever, I don't know if he'll ever get it, but I guess he wants to try, I guess is what I'm hearing him. And, you know, if we stay at Res 2, you know, that might get him to where he actually is going to get to, but that's really up to y'all. I mean, that's for Res 4. If you want a BDP to
Limit it to the-
to do the density restriction, then that's up to the board.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir, Mr. Roth.
at the last meeting, I was one that proposed we use Res 2. And the reason for that was my understanding that it was not possible for because of our comp plan, to have 4 units per acre without having a public sewer system.
Right.
And now that I understand that was incorrect, I don't see a reason for not giving them Res 4. I would recommend that we change this to, and give them Res 4. Now, as far as the density goes in the subdivision, I mean, in the an H8 item, the difference between R11 and R13 is only 200 square feet. The lot size is the same. It's not going to make any difference in terms of being in a rural area or not. I live in a rural area. But one thing I will say is we have approved 3 or 4 subdivisions recently where the developer specifically requested RU 111 in order to have that flexibility.
Right.
Now, he hasn't said anything about wanting to do low-income housing or affordable housing, and RU 111 gives him that as an option, more so than an RU 13. When you look at the subdivision on the next, I saw houses, a lot of them were 2,000, but there were some that were as small as 1,500, and there may be some even smaller, I don't know. I didn't do an exhaustive search. But from my point of view, I don't see any problem with his request and with his request for either the zoning or the land use change. And, you know, I consider 1,100's too small, but there's a lot of people that are looking for smaller houses.
Right.
And there is no affordable housing, or it's going away rapidly.
Oh, yeah.
in the county. But then I do understand Liz's points as well.
So just currently, they have RR1, which gives them 25 units. That's what they currently have. That's what they're zoning. That's what they bought that property at. The RU 111 gives them 138 units on septic tanks. And
No, it doesn't.
that was my concern.
No, it doesn't.
No.
No, it's not? That's what my book says. RU 111,
Yeah,
138 units?
I don't think so.
No, It's in our,
It'd be
the
impossible.
land use is Res 4.
It's
That
not-
means 4
yeah.
units per acre. The best he can get is 96.
Right.
And that's without,
And when you take out roadways and some other things, drainage,
And I do have a
the
rough
chance
layout
of
if you
getting
want to see
96
one,
is
but
0.
it's an engineering depiction here of it. Well, yeah.
So the comp plan limits it to the 96 units, and as you're saying, even if he can get there.
We would
Is that
never
what
get
I'm
there.
hearing?
It just.
That's right. It limits it, and
We would
I
never get
believe
to
the
that.
chances of him getting it is probably 0.
Yeah, it's.
The
it's-
only way they could get it is if they brought sewer, and even if they brought sewer, they still won't get 4 units to the acre.
Right,
With the retention ponds in the streets, it's.
Usually for a subdivision with water and sewer on small lots, even 50-foot lots, which I don't think these are 50-foot lots, right?
Nope.
There's what, 75-foot lots?
But it would give.
I can tell you in my experience, when you have a Res 4 land use, you're probably looking, 3.2, 3.6 dwelling units per acre, just because from a, gross acreage, you're probably only going to be able to develop at 70%, which takes into account open space, roads, retention ponds. That's just, the mathematics of it.
Yeah.
Right. But it would give us the ability to go 2.5 maybe.
Yes, sir, John.
The letter he read from Ms. Black over at the school district, is that entered into the record?
Yes.
Can I get a copy of that? 'Cause I didn't get a copy of that, it's not in my pack.
Yeah, so the agenda I have online includes the full letter from Ms. Black from the school board.
Okay.
It should be the last entry on H, or right above the disclosure on
It's not
H
in my
8.
pack.
Date is that, January 7th?
And also on
Yeah,
H
that's what
7.
he's got. Thank you.
Should be page 258 of your packet.
Yep.
She
And then
did
again on
apologize to us. She
page
just-
312.
She said she forgot and added it in, and you brought that to my attention.
On the item number.
Yeah, I've got it.
So he's done.
Okay, I need a motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I move that we approve, or recommend approval of Res 4 for item H7.
second.
Okay, you got a motion by Ron, a second by Ben. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
We have one opposed. That's Liz.
And, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
For item H8, I move that we recommend approval of the RU111 zoning as is, no BDP required.
Okay. Who seconded? Got a motion by Ron, a second. I'm sorry, man, I keep, Robert. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Liz opposed.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Now, before we, board, before we adjourn, we got to, thank you. There, John, you had some items for discussion?
Oh, you're going to throw it back at me?
No, well, the class or whatever.
Okay. George left. Jeff, you and I have been speaking about giving some training for some of the members here on zoning rules that George had spoken to me about. Remember that correspondence?
If that's the direction of the board, I just, to tailor what you're looking for, it's up to the board to, direct me of what kind of training that you guys are all looking for. Just saying, zoning is a little bit broad. If you guys are looking for something specific, then I can go back to my staff to look at, something that can help you enhance your decision-making process.
That's the direction that I was inquiring about. We're not all as knowledgeable as Bruce.
Took you 40 years.
I was doing something else during that 40. So how can we set that up? How can we, you want a syllabus from us, or would you guys put together something that you feel that you could give us to enhance our ability to make decisions?
Well, the board would have to decide the training and what you guys are looking for. So, I can tell you that I'm very, very short-staffed. It'll take some time to put something together for you all. I just want to make sure that I'm giving you what you need as far as the requested training. So if there's, if you want to, talk about the purview of this board, we can certainly do that. If you're looking for the difference between permitted uses and conditional uses, we can do that too. We can talk about the different zoning classifications, the difference between BU1 and BU2 and BU1A. You tell me what you guys are looking for.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. Mr. Robert.
Staff, I think you guys do a very wonderful job in putting your packages together. They're very informative. The GIS maps are extremely helpful, and particularly staff comments. I think what John is asking is, let's start globally and then drill down what pretty much the object of the board is. We do ask for a lot of site plan. We're getting into the weeds on vegetation. Sorry, that is a pun. But particularly buffer zones, we have some developers here, we have a bunch of engineers here, some architects. So some of us are very knowledgeable on land development, but not everyone is. So some of the peculiarities for Brevard County, I think, would be helpful. So if I would like to, Mr. Chairman, nominate John as our POC, point of contact, to do any coordination with staff, since he came up with a brilliant idea.
I would have to agree there. I, like today, I think sometimes, Jeff, as the board, we get sidetracked. Instead of...
We do.
Right. We just need to face on zoning or a BDP, or, and then we end up with how high a wall, because I said the wall, but only to appease the people there.
Sure.
But, the overall picture.
So I will tell you that one of the conversations that I had with Mr. Hoppengarden is our consistency table in 1255 and being able to read that. Is that something that you guys want to first take a look at? Is that?
That's a good idea, because as I had mentioned to you, when you look at it online and then you look at it when you print it, it's different. Okay, so there's some confusion there in how that form actually operates.
Sure, and we can do that in a short PowerPoint presentation. Unfortunately, today it gets kind of long, and so I like to keep these trainings poignant and short, just because you guys volunteers and trying to get you out in a reasonable time, and with staff time as well. So what I'll do is I'll put something together. It probably won't be for a couple months, but I will first take a whack at if that's something that you guys want to do. I can certainly do that. My concern with the land development code regulations is that sometimes, or that's really outside of the zoning code. That's in the land development code. Certainly, I can provide that information for you, but that's not something that you should be using in your, that's kind of like getting in the weeds of what we just talked about, of things that we, talk about, but should not be part of your recommendation. So that would, but again, we can put something together and just outline what the code requires, and that way you guys are better informed.
I think it's a great idea. I think that when we do get into the weeds, we make these meetings really long, and we do stray a bit, so understandable.
And what's it going to take to get these computers available to us?
Got to be employed.
Congress.
Well, that's an IT issue, that they don't, since you're not county employees, that they do not give you a login for that.
We could change that, though. We could actually ask for some money, so we could get a county check, so we could be employees to get the, see, he fell right into that, John.
He did. You set him up nicely.
So what I would tell you to do is you can certainly bring your own personal device and log in on the county website to do that. I think Mr. Moya does that with his personal computer as a workaround.
The counters here are not so.
Any other discussion from the board?
I just want to complete that issue. There isn't a lot of space here with everything that's here. And there is I read today there is a provision that we can get money for mileage. If we get checks on our mileage because we're volunteers, would that be considered?
You'll get it from Brevard County.
Yeah, from the county, right? Maybe.
Henry, when did they do away with that?
We actually, at one time, actually got paid here.
Right.
Really?
Yeah.
$15 a meeting, and they messed up the entire system, so they deleted that. They couldn't hack that because the bill sometime was like $50 or something. So we actually did. We actually did get paid.
Okay, any other discussions?
Happy to be here.
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.